listener production.
Hello, happy Friday and welcome to The Briefing. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. Magazines are making a comeback. 5 years after it was axed for being commercially unviable, Cosmopolitan is the latest to be resurrected in Australia, with printing to resume in August this year.
In terms of the reader perspective, I think there is something still really special about having a tangible paper product and allowing yourself the luxury of having that 15 minutes to sit down and actually go through the pages.
So why Cosmo? And why now? That's our deep dive today on The Briefing. But first, the news headlines with Antoinette Lattouf. It is Friday, May 10.
Hey, Sasha. G'day, everyone. So there are more developments in the US about its weaponry and wanting to stop an export to Israel if a major invasion of Rafah gets underway. So President Joe Biden said for the first time overnight that he would stop shipments of American weapons to Israel if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders a major invasion of the city of Rafah. And that's the key word here, major, because attacks on Rafah are already underway.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
So that was Joe Biden in an interview with CNN saying that it is just wrong if they invade Rafah, but the IDF is already bombing Rafah. The US president also acknowledged that the American weapons have been used to kill civilians in Gaza. And this is a bit of a turning point in the now 7-month conflict, as previously, Biden strongly supported Israel's efforts, but the rhetoric is starting to change as public anger about the scale of the destruction and the amount of innocent people, including thousands of children, have been slaughtered by the IDF.
Yeah, and as you said, Antoinette, some attacks on Rafah have already started. So far, more than 100,000 people have fled Rafah after Israel intensified its bombardment on the area. That's according to the UN. And this is the largest movement of population in Gaza we've seen for many months. And journalists on the ground are speaking to people there who are just terrified and confused. They don't know where else they can go. And Biden further said on Wednesday, and there's this idea of the red line that Israel would cross if it had this full-scale invasion of Rafah. Biden said that Israel had not yet crossed that red line, but he has repeated Israel needs to do more to protect the lives of civilians in Gaza. 20 years on from the baby bonus, the federal government is asking us to have more babies. The Treasurer has been doing the media rounds ahead of next Tuesday's budget announcement, and in an interview with 9 newspapers, he admitted the fertility rate is not where he'd like it to be, saying it'd be better if birth rates were higher. Now, net migration is tipped to fall over the coming years. That's according to budget forecasts. And that is what's likely to reignite this debate about how we can add to the Australian population without relying on immigration.
Yes, Sasha, so he did suggest that it would be better if we had more babies, but he stopped short of what former Treasurer Peter Costello said in the early 2000s, which was like, have one for mum, one for dad and one for the country. But Jim Chalmers also highlighted some measures aimed at making it easier for people to afford kids, and that includes superannuation paid on parental leave, more housing and expanding childcare. But he did rule out a repeat of the Howard Costello baby bonus, and that was introduced in 2002. And that measure saw parents pay a lump sum of $3,000 for each baby they had, and the measure was abolished in 2014.
Yeah, so this conversation about Australia's birth and fertility rate, I get the sense it's going to start ramping up a little bit. The fact the Treasurer is talking about it, we haven't heard that, as you said, since kind of the Howard Costello years. And we did actually cover Australia's falling births in Wednesday's episode of The Briefing. If you're listening to this and you want to know more about how that will affect the country. Look, in some of his other media interviews, we were talking yesterday in The Briefing about job seeker payments payments and how an increase to that has all but been ruled out. But the Treasurer has now flagged that he's looking to expand rebates and concessions for people doing it tough. So that's things like rental assistance and energy bill relief programs. So we haven't got the confirmation. That will likely come next Tuesday night when he hands down the budget.
Executives from TikTok, Meta and X will be grilled by Australian politicians about the societal damage they cause. Labor has announced it'll launch a parliamentary inquiry to probe how social media is impacting the nation's mental health, public debates and journalism. The Communication Minister, Michelle Rowland, says it's all about holding these platforms to account and making sure they're being transparent.
Yeah, and a big part of the inquiry will be looking at Meta's decision to stop paying Australian media companies for news content on its sites, with fears it could perpetuate the spread of misinformation, harmful content and scams. Also developing is this fight between Elon Musk and the e-safety commissioner, Antoinette. So you might remember that stabbing at a church in Sydney back in April last month. And the video remained on X, and the Australian government moved in and tried to force X to take this video down, saying that it was harmful content and that it shouldn't be seen. This launched a bit of a back and forth with X. Elon Musk was tweeting about Albo and saying all sorts of things that, they're trying to censor the internet and take control. So this is going to be heard by the federal court today, but Elon Musk's X has launched this case in the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which is going to test the merits of the e-safety commissioner's order. So this is all going to kind of start ramping up again now. It kind of bubbled down for the last couple of weeks, but we're about to start hearing about it again.
Yeah, and look, it's an important test case to see just how easy it is to legislate or control the internet. And to date, we've seen that it's almost impossible. So there's no doubt that everybody will be watching this case closely.
And Apple's new ad for its latest iPad has sparked a storm of controversy. So this ad features a giant crusher, or like a hydraulic press, that comes down from above and obliviates musical instruments, books, record players, cameras, art, paintings. And the tagline is, "Imagine all the things it'll be used to create," referring to the iPad. Now, obviously it is very visual, but we've cut out a little snippet to have a listen to.
Give me a reason to build my world around you.
God. So what you're hearing there is all of those things being crushed to the backdrop of a jaunty tune. The ad is being absolutely roasted online, Antoinette. One commentator calling it the tech company's worst PR move since it forced us all to listen to U2 on our iPods.
So obviously the video is meant to demonstrate how it's their creativity is all being compressed into the latest iPad, but it's not just regular punters that are angry online criticising the ad, because on any given day people are angry online criticising ads. But celebs are also speaking out, including Hugh Grant, who called it on X. He said that it's the destruction of the human experience courtesy of Silicon Valley. And I think obviously there is a big concern about how AI is going to overtake human creativity. Maybe the ad should have been clearer, that it's about capturing and honouring the essence about, what's important with all of those musical instruments and previous technologies, bringing them together in a device and perhaps not crushing the soul out of them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I watched this ad and it's very violent. There's a lot of imagery of animals. There's like a little animal cartoon that makes that noise. You might have heard it in the grab where it kind of goes, "Ow!" Like it's like, oh my God, I'm being crushed to death. It's very full on to watch. And I think that's where they've missed the mark. It's not like some beautiful, look at all these beautiful things and we're bringing them to this one place. It feels destructive. And I think that's why people aren't happy with it. So yes, if you haven't yet, go check the ad out. It is extremely tone deaf in my humble opinion. Antoinette, thanks so much for joining us for the headlines. We'll see you tomorrow for the weekend briefing. But next up is our deep dive into the comeback of Cosmopolitan magazine. Once upon a time, women's magazines had a place on every hairdresser's benchtop, every family kitchen table, and inside every teenager's bedside drawer. That all changed, though, with the advent and surging dominance of online media, and magazine numbers slowly dwindled with dozens of titles axed in Australia. But in the last year, we've seen a rebirth of our love for the mag, and female readership across publications is growing by 4% year on year. Now, one of Australia's favourite magazines for women is making a comeback. Cosmopolitan, which first launched in the US in 1965, is following in the footsteps of Elle and Esquire and is being reborn, with the first copies set to hit news agencies in August. It marks a stark turnaround from just 5 years ago when the mag was deemed commercially unviable. So what will it take to make Cosmo successful? And how can it survive when we can read whatever we want, whenever we want, at the click of a button? Katarina Kroslakova is the publisher at KK Press who is taking on this challenge, and she joins me now. Katarina, welcome to the briefing. And look, first off, congratulations. I was an avid Cosmo reader in its heyday. I'm personally stoked at this news. And you yourself have said you had an emotional reaction to this particular project. Why are you excited about Cosmo's return?
Well, I remember when Cosmo left our magazine and newsagent shelves back in 2018, everyone kind of heard the collective hearts of generations breaking.
Yeah.
It was such harsh news. No one saw it coming. And yes, there were some challenges with the magazine landscape and with that particular product and the brand back in 2018. However, it was just such an icon and such a part of everyone's growing up, not just in Australia, obviously globally, but in Australia, I think we took it really hard. So then when we had the opportunity to revive it this year in 2024, it's just the same way that hearts break, I think now there's just been squeals of delight, and I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, me too. I feel exactly the same because, like I said, I was a reader and there was something about having that physical copy of the magazine. I had magazine subscriptions, having it arrive at your door, and like the tactile element of like pulling the pages apart and reading something that's been curated for you is so different to what we do with social media and the internet. Speaking of, you know, it coming back, there was a reason it went away. It was declared not commercially viable anymore. But we're seeing this resurgence in women returning to print. Why do you think that's happening?
Women are returning to print in a big way. So we did some numbers and we saw the latest Roy Morgan research, which indicated that the women's categories of fashion and lifestyle are up 36% year on year in the bracket of 18 to 35s. I don't think anything's up 36%.
No, that's huge.
That's huge, right? 36%, 18 to 35. I thought this is magic. There could not be a better time to launch. So the way that we've had a look at the launch or the relaunch has been strategic, as you say, in a commercial partnership kind of way, and we've been really on the front foot trying to approach agencies and trying to approach clients. But to be fair, we've actually been overwhelmed by proactives and by people getting in touch with us and really seeing Cosmo in a different light and a really powerful, positive tool in getting their message across to this kind of almost new audience. So I think commercially, you're right, there was some challenges there that we had to address head on. And then in terms of women, look, what I'm really passionate about with Cosmo is providing a safe space for women and making it positive and making it supportive and making the magazine kind of nourishing and nurturing for women. Like, of course, we'll discuss some challenging topics and of course we'll have to go in depth in some pretty important content. But at the end of the day, I want Cosmo to be that support system and that best friend and to be there for the girl through her firsts, whatever that first might be. It's just really important to keep in real, like actual real authentic touch with the reader. Magazines often lose sight of who the reader is. And they often do things for gimmicks or for Instagram or for the editor's ego or to please the advertisers or whatever. And all those things, I understand it's just part of life. But once you lose connection with the reader and what they need from you as a magazine publisher, then I think you've got some problems.
Yeah. You can't deny, as I said, the viability issue, right? So these days, and for the last decade, I'd say at least, we have been able to pick up our phones. If I want to know about the latest beauty trend, I can Google it. If I want to see what Kim Kardashian was wearing on whatever red carpet, I can Google it. I can sit on Instagram and be fed ads about, different, again, beauty products, fashion products, like places I should go, things I should see, things I should watch. How are you going to make this particular iteration of Cosmo viable, given that we can have whatever we want, whenever we want, at the touch of a button?
In terms of the reader perspective, I think there is something still really special about having a tangible paper product and allowing yourself the luxury of having that 15 minutes to sit down and actually go through the pages. So yes, we will join them and we will have TikTok and we will have Reels and we will have Instagram and we will provide you the latest eyeliner technique and the best way to do whatever and the best way to write a resume for your first job or how to start your first superannuation fund or how to do the Cosmo quiz with your boyfriend to see or girlfriend to see if you're compatible. We'll do all that fun stuff. That's not going to go away. But then the paper product, the actual magazine, when you have that tangible experience, I think that becomes the memory point. And I think if you talk to people about Cosmo, that's the magic, having that connectivity with those pages and becoming really familiar with the agony aunts and with the sex advice columnist and with the feature writers, like having that community around you that you can flip through and go, yes, I remember her. I really want to find out what she's going to tell me or where she's going to take me or what he's going to advise me to do or give me those sort of insights. So I think building a connection between the regular contributors and the actual creators of the magazine is going to be really important. But like I said, it is just sitting down with a copy of a magazine and we'll make the experience quite premium. We'll make the paper really delicious and we're going to make the cover treatments beautiful. We're not going to make it just like something that you want to throw away. You definitely want to keep it. And in terms of price, much to the horror of my retail and distribution director, I'm going to make it $3.95.
Wow.
For the first 2 issues at least.
Yeah.
What I love about the magazine and have really had that reinforced this last week or two ever since the news is out that we launched, is that the parents also remember and the grandparents also remember the magazine and they still think of it fondly. And so I'm really hoping that that also sparks a debate and a connection between generations or between parents. So, for example, if a dad is struggling talking to his daughter about maybe her identity or her challenges or bullying or loneliness or whatever, like if there's a magazine that can help parents talk with their children or with their family or their friends or their community about some things that are difficult, I think that's something one of the things I'm most excited about.
Who are you looking to talk to with this magazine? I'd say the demographic previously, I think I started reading it when I was in my mid to late teens. I graduated from Girlfriend and went to Cosmo and it felt a little bit grown up for me in those late teen years, but then as I was getting into my early 20s, it felt like it was really speaking to me. Is that the goal of Cosmo this time as well?
No, you're absolutely right. It's definitely going to be obviously Girlfriend isn't around like it used to be or Dolly, which is a shame. But yes, it will be definitely the late teens right up to, yes, the early to mid-30s. That's going to be the core. But I also don't want to forget the slightly older woman who, when I say older, it's like 40s, like my age, but that's old. I feel old today.
You're not, I promise.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a look at that. But yeah, 18 to 35 is our call.
What about Gen Z? You could argue that I guess elder Gen Zs are sitting around their early 20s, so it's not like they've never seen or understand what a magazine is, but do they have that same relationship that millennials and Gen X do where they remember waiting for the issue of whatever it was that they were reading? Do you think you'll struggle to connect with Gen Z?
It's funny, waiting is such a lost art, isn't it?
Yes.
We don't wait for anything. Look, as I said, the TikToks and the Reels and all our social presence, I think that's going to be a huge starting point for us to get that audience. What I'm really passionate about is magazines and starting to educate exactly that age group and exactly those readers to make sure that they have a lifelong life of magazines. And I think if we just rely entirely on the digital world, as fabulous as our website will be, I think if we rely entirely on digital, then that whole art of magazines is lost. And I know lots of girls like me who even now take a magazine and rip out the Chanel ad and put it on their wall.
I want to finish up by talking about the Cosmo girl. So Cosmopolitan was born as we kind of know it in 1965 in America, and it created this archetype for a woman to aspire to. She was confident in the bedroom and the boardroom. She was confident in life in general. She didn't feel like she needed a man's validation for anything, but she probably aspired to get married and have kids, but also have a career. The idea that a woman can have it all, I suppose, was really born from the Cosmo girl. And while that was groundbreaking in the 60s and the 70s, and then it kind of became really achievable in the 80s, 90s and early 2000s, is that same story going to work for women in the 2020s and beyond? Like, who is the modern Cosmo girl?
Yeah, I love that. That's actually the most excellent description I've heard of the magazine's history. What I love is that prior to 1965, it was actually a magazine directed at women, but it was edited by a bunch of blokes, and it was not going well.
House party tips and stuff, right? Like how to make great deviled eggs.
Good housekeeping,
Yeah.
I know, and it was tanking, so that's why they had to revolutionise it in 1965. Look, the thing that I find most interesting to explore at the moment with women is what's changed and what we've gone through. So between 2018, 2024, oh my goodness, women have been through a lot.
Yeah.
There's been some women who've had breakups, who've lost jobs, who've lost the opportunity to go through IVF through COVID because of the medical facilities being unavailable. There's been people who've lost a lot. There's people who've gained a lot. I think the confidence side of things is really interesting. I think that's going to be something that we're going to be exploring quite frequently, because we tend to put on this bravado that we do have it all, but do we? So
And can we as
and
well?
can we? Yeah. I mean, look, I was talking to Quentin Bryce a few years ago, and she gave me that magic phrase, you can have it all, just not at the same time. And I think that's still true. I want to look at the girl from the moment she wakes up to the last scroll of her phone. Like, I just want to have a look at the whole day and structure it. Do the tips and the quick bites online straight away, but then go deeper and give it lots of layers. I was talking to a girlfriend about dating apps and how now everyone's just got app fatigue. I never did any of the dating apps. I was like a in real life person my whole life. But having a look at that and the dating scene and how that's changed for women, and the fact that the women no longer have to wait to be approached, that they can go first. And where are we going to go and date? Like, if people are getting the app fatigue, that's really interesting. And sexual confidence is going to be such a huge part of, as you say, you got to be confident in your clothing, out of your clothing. That's going to be, I think people are expecting that. And also, I want to think about how we bring back the fun stuff like the sealed section and the centerfold. There are still Cosmos in the world who do it. There is a lot more clothing than I was expecting on the men, but there was like a cute little cowboy in a check shirt. So I want to have a look at all those mainstays. The Cosmo Bachelor of the Year. Do we still do that? Is the time gone? Like, I want to kind of explore that with our team once we get the team set in, as to how do you pay, respect and respect the heritage of the magazine and what it did in 1965, and how do you kind of bring it to the 2024 Cosmo girl, but with respect and relevance and a modern look at things.
I can't wait to find out how you do it. As I said, I'm stoked that this is happening. Katarina, we'll see first editions in August, is that right?
Yep, 12th
All
of August.
Well, we'll keep an eye out. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That is all for this morning's episode of The Briefing. But before you go, we would love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it as well. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. We're also on TikTok and YouTube. Search Listener Newsroom. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. Thanks for listening.
Listener.